So the Noah plays are called the mystery plays, but they used to be called back in the old days the Corpus Christi plays or the miracle plays. You'll usually find those titles in older essays. And these plays use the Bible as their source material. They were staged between 1378 to the mid-16th century until they were banned by the Protestant authorities after the Reformation in England. Shakespeare, for example, uses these plays quite a lot, and there's a lot of theories that as a Catholic in the North, he saw the last time the Coventry plays were played. Now, there was some opposition in the Middle Ages to these plays. There's an English treatise called A Treatise on the Playing of Miracles, or Miracle Plays, written between 1380 and 1425, where we find great opposition to the idea of having pleasure with, quote, playing. In this case, the staging of plays based on material drawn from the Bible. The author worries that the plays are contrary to the message of Scriptures. And the message of Scriptures in his vision is suffering and penance. And worse, they're idolatrous. They make up images of God.
Then sithin since miraculous playing, the putting on of miracle plays, reverseth the will of God, and the end for the which he wrought miraculous to us. No doubt but that miraculous playing is ver truly, taking of God's name in idol. And if this sufficeth not to thee, albeit that it should sufficeth to an heathen man, that therefore will not playen the workes of his Mahomet, Muhammad, I pray thee read entirely in the book of life that is Christ Jesus. And if thou mayest find it in him that he ever exampled that men shouldn't play a miraculous, but always the reverse, and our belief curseth that hadden or lassen over that Christ exampled us to do. How then darest thou holden with miraculous playing, sitting all the works of Christ, reverse them, and in none of his works they been grounded?
In other words, can you find anywhere in the Bible any example of Christ playing and making at miracles? This is a proto-Protestant critique of images, but something that Catholics are not concerned with. You'll remember in Chaucer's Wife of Bath, and you probably read this in high school or you've taken the Chaucer class before, we get a taste for how popular these plays were. She says in Flirting with Jenkins, who would be her fifth husband, that they would go to
vigiles and to processiones, to preaching eke also, and to these pilgrimages, to plays of miraculous and to marriages.
And note her attire.
And wear it I wore upon my gay scarlet gitas, gowns, these wormes, nor these moths, nor these mites, upon my peril fret hem never a deal, never bothered my clothes. And wosto wow, for they were used well.
In other words, she put on her best clothes to be attractive to men. And it's viewed as entertainment. Even the Miller's Tale, if you remember that one from high school or from a previous Chaucer class, it uses the Noah plays that you read as the basis for the comedy. Now, these plays can be described as cycles. They're like a TV miniseries, or it's raining right now, which makes it very much part of Noah. So they're kind of like a TV miniseries. You put the entire Bible on the stage, right? And it speaks of an encyclopedic impulse in medieval literature to capture everything. And you see this, for example, in Malory, where the entirety of Arthurian literature is put into one book. And also think of Thomas Aquinas with the Summa Theologica, which is all theology put into one large summa or summation of all things written about it. So the mystery plays are also in that way encyclopedic. They begin with Adam and Eve, and they end with the resurrection. Plus, of course, you also get some extra biblical material like the harrowing of hell. where Jesus, as I told you, goes into hell to free the patriarchs of the Old Testament. Now, there are 4 surviving cycles that you could read that are complete. They are York, Chester, Wakefield, and Endtown. So the plays vary in the way they're performed. You got to think of them as pageants, like the pageants of the Masters in Laguna Beach. The York cycle includes 48 to 56 plays. It was performed in 1376. It survives in 1 manuscript, and that manuscript was a city record, okay? And we know that it was played on mobile wagons, and these wagons were called pageants, and it was played in the middle of summer outdoors. So the wagons basically, each wagon would have a scene, and as it passed a fixed location, it would play out that scene and then move on. In York, civic organizations or guilds organized the plays. Guilds are basically trade unions, and in Latin they were called ministerium, which means basically why we call them mystery plays, right? The mysteries are basically the work of unions. And each guild or craft in that city was responsible for 1 play. And so if you look at, the list is kind of funny if you look at it. For example, the shipbuilders are responsible for Noah's Ark. The fishermen and the sailors are responsible for the flood play. You also have the thatchers, who are responsible for the nativity. And of course, why thatchers? Well, obviously the manger. And then you have the pinners. The pinners were the guys who would make joining pegs. They're responsible for the crucifixion. And in fact, the York play on the crucifixion is very, very funny, if you can find it. I mean, if you can consider the crucifixion funny, but it's who are those funny guys? It's pre-Monty Python, all right? And then, of course, the butchers were responsible for the death of Christ. So there's a vast urban project, and almost they speculate 1/10 of the city was responsible for these plays. The Chester cycle, which played between 1422 and into 1575, so into the Reformation, survives in 5 manuscripts, so that makes it very unique. And in Chester, we get a description of the pageants from a book in 1609. And basically, these are 2-story high. They're floats. They're like Mardi Gras floats. They're 2-story high. The bottom floor is the dressing room, and the top floor is where the acting takes place. And then we have Wakefield, also called Townley. There are 32 plays in that one. 5 of the plays actually come from the York cycle. And this one, they assume, was not played on those wagons. It was in fact staged out in a field, perhaps near a church or somewhere. And they know that because the stage is described as being, quote, a place and scaffold. And if you think of the Miller's Tale, the Miller makes a joke, a Pontius Pilate joke, about how one of the characters acts like he's Pontius Pilate. In other words, he acts like Johnny Depp, a character that chews scenery. And he describes him as Pontius Pilate on the scaffolds. And the Wakefield cycle is also very famous because it has the best writer in the group. His name is the Wakefield Master. The Wakefield Master is famous because he wrote his plays in a distinctive stock and wheel stanza, and Noah, as you can see, was written in that stanza. Here's two examples. The stanza is made up of 4 long lines. Now, what's interesting about this 4 long lines stanzas, these first 4 lines, is that there is not only a normal tail rhyme in A, like in ye, plante, unseslente, forte, or over here, maca, taka, raka, and maca, but it also has an internal rhyme in the middle of the rhyme, in other words. So in this case, you have hichte, slichte, fichte, and richte. Over here, you have for done, a bone, son, and done. So you have A. And then you have a bob, and we ran into bobs in Sir Gawain the Green Knight. So you have the stock, you have a little bob, and the bob is always in B. So in this case it's they, and in this case it's fail. It's always bob is always a short line. And then we have a 4-line wheel. And the 4-line wheel's rhyme scheme is CCCB. So in this case it's fame, came, hame, and then C, thray for they and thray. And in here it's also two, mo, sail, fail, sail. So just using this one stanza, for all she be fordone that liefen land but yea, with floodis that from a bone shall fall, and that plante, it shall begin full soon to rain unceasantly, after days 7 be done, and endure days 40 withouten fail. Take to thy ship also, if ye kind beastis two, male and female, but no more, before or thou pull up thy sail. And finally, we have the N-Town plays, which used to be called the Hegi plays or the Lodus Coventry plays. If York was a civic play done, like New Orleans does Mardi Gras, Baton Rouge does Mardi Gras, the N-Town plays are far more theological. The presumption is that it was a monastic series of 43 plays composed around 1420 to 1450. They're very intellectual, they're very learned, and the reason why they're called N-Town is because N is a traditional abbreviation for the Latin nomen. In other words, it's like if you've ever been to a Latin, not a Latin mass, to a Catholic mass, they'll always put an N to fill in the name. Like it'll say like Pope and they'll put an N, and Bishop and they'll put an N. That's where you plug in the name. So they call them the N-Town plays because basically it was plug in whatever city is playing that play. That's the name of that play. So in other words, it seems like it was a series of plays that were shared or played out in different communities. It also survives in a single manuscript, and it is also a compilation because it also includes a passion play as well. So these are massive plays. You got to think huge floats, large crowds, basically the Mardi Gras experience. And we're going to look at, in the next episode, we're going to look at my favorite of them all, the Noah plays.
Alright guys, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell.
Wait, you're saying that I didn't make any sense?
I'm just trying to clarify the N-Town. So
All right.
what you're saying is that the N-Town plays existed in one manuscript and that it traveled from town to town. And so then when they put it on whatever town they put it on in, they would call
Okay.
it by that.
That's my wife. That's my Mrs. Noah. So I guess I'm not being clear. The N-Town Plays is a compilation, a compilatio. It is a collection of plays. It doesn't have a designation. The assumption is that it's found in a monastic origins, and because it's called N-Town, it's because it was probably copied in other communities. They didn't just throw that manuscript around, I imagine. It's probably the end result, probably like the last record of it.
It still doesn't make sense.
You could just call it whatever you want. It's a repository.
I don't know. That doesn't.